Welcome to Ancient Relics Keeper, where lost truths, ancient mysteries, and forbidden history collide. Let's question the past and uncover what was never meant to be found. On a desert ridge in Peru stand 13 stone towers, seemingly random and ruined. For centuries, their purpose was a mystery. Now they are recognized as the oldest astronomical observatory in the Americas, a precise 2,300-year-old solar calendar. In the starkly beautiful and intensely arid coastal desert of northern Peru, nestled within the Casmasecan River basin, lies the monumental ruin of Chanquillo. For centuries, this sprawling archaeological complex was a source of deep puzzlement to the few explorers and archaeologists who studied it. Its most prominent feature is a massive, triple-walled fortress perched atop a hill and a strange tooth-like line of 13 stone towers running along a nearby ridge seemed to speak of a warlike and mysterious people. The site was enigmatic, its purpose obscure, and its creators lost to history. It was only in the early 21st century that a radical new interpretation, confirmed by meticulous surveying and analysis, revealed the site's true, astonishing purpose. Chanquillo was not just a fort, it was a sophisticated astronomical instrument, a giant landscape-sized calendar designed to track the precise movement of the sun throughout the entire year. The enigmatic ruins were, in fact, the oldest solar observatory in the Americas, a 2,300-year-old testament to a lost science and a forgotten faith. The site of Chanquillo is a large and complex one, composed of several distinct architectural elements spread across a desert landscape. The most visually dominant of these is the imposing hilltop structure that first gave the site its reputation as a fortress. This building, strategically positioned on a commanding peak, is a marvel of ancient defensive architecture. A short distance to the north of this fortified hill, and clearly part of the same ancient cultural landscape, lies the feature that holds the key to the entire mystery: the 13 towers. Running in a neat north-to-south line for approximately 300 meters along the crest of a low, barren ridge, these 13 stone structures are unlike anything else in Andean archaeology. They are not tall, slender towers in the modern sense, but squat, rectangular buildings constructed with the same stone and mortar technique as the main fort. They vary slightly in size and height, ranging from 2 to 6 meters tall, and are remarkably well preserved, standing today much as they did over 2 millennia ago. The spacing between the towers is not uniform, but it is deliberate and precise, creating a distinctive serrated or tooth-like profile against the horizon. The towers themselves are simple, solid structures, with no internal rooms or chambers. They feature inset staircases that lead up to a small flat platform on the summit of each tower. For decades, the purpose of these 13 towers was the complete and baffling enigma. Their linear arrangement and proximity to the fortress led to a number of plausible, yet ultimately incorrect, theories. The most obvious interpretation was that they were part of the site's defensive system. They could have been watchtowers, an advanced line of sentry posts providing a commanding view of the surrounding river valley. However, this theory had significant flaws. The towers are located on a relatively low ridge, not the highest point in the area, which would have been a poor choice for observation posts. Furthermore, they are not particularly well designed for defense, lacking the arrow slits or other features one would expect from military structures. Most tellingly, they are easily accessible, with open staircases that would have made them simple for an enemy to capture. Another prominent theory was that the towers were ceremonial platforms or religious shrines. The staircases leading to the summit suggested that they were meant to be ascended, perhaps by priests or shamans performing rituals. Each tower could have been dedicated to a different deity, an ancestor, or a sacred mountain peak. The entire line of towers could have formed a processional way, a sacred route for religious ceremonies. This theory was more compelling, as it acknowledged the likely ritual importance of such a monumental construction, but it failed to explain the specific number of towers 13 or their precise, non-uniform spacing. Why build exactly 13 ceremonial platforms in this specific pattern? The symbolic logic remained obscure. Other, more imaginative theories suggested the towers were symbolic representations of warriors standing in a line of defense, or even markers for a series of royal tombs. The mystery of the 13 towers was the stubborn one, a puzzle that lacked a crucial piece of evidence. The structures were clearly important, the product of immense labor and a powerful shared purpose, but that purpose remained tantalizingly out of reach, lost in the mists of Andean prehistory. The breakthrough that would solve the mystery of Chanquillo came not from digging deeper into the towers themselves, but from expanding the field of inquiry to the surrounding landscape. The archaeologists leading the modern investigation, Yvonne Ghezi and Clive Ruggles, began to work from a hypothesis that the complex might be astronomical in nature. The practice of archaeoastronomy, which studies how ancient peoples understood and used the phenomena of the sky, has revealed that many ancient monuments around the world were deliberately aligned with celestial events. The researchers suspected that the 13 towers might not be the complete picture, but just one component of a much larger observational instrument. They hypothesized that to understand the towers, they needed to find the specific place from which they were intended to be viewed. After meticulously surveying the entire area surrounding the ridge, they identified two unique and architecturally distinct observation points. These were not natural features, but man-made structures that were clearly designed as special privileged viewing locations. To the west of the ridge, they found the ruins of a rectangular building with a single, large doorway that opened directly towards the line of towers. This was designated the Western Observing Point. To the east of the ridge, they found another, even more compelling structure. This was a small, isolated building, heavily damaged, but with a narrow corridor that was perfectly oriented to provide a restricted, framed view of the towers. This was the Eastern Observing Point. These 2 points were the missing pieces of the puzzle. They were the locations from which an ancient observer was meant to stand to witness the celestial spectacle that the towers were built to frame. With the observation points identified, the true function of the 13 towers was revealed with stunning clarity. Standing at the Western Observing Point and looking east towards the ridge at dawn, an ancient viewer could watch the sun rise throughout the entire year, using the line of towers as a precise solar calendar. The system is elegant and remarkably accurate. At the time of the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year in the southern hemisphere, around June 21st, the sun would rise on the horizon just to the left of the northernmost tower, the first one in the line. As the days and weeks passed, the position of the sunrise would appear to move progressively southwards along the horizon. Each day, it would rise in a slightly different position relative to the towers. The gaps between the individual towers acted as precise markers, like the markings on a giant ruler. An experienced observer, likely a specialized priest or sun watcher, could use the position of the sunrise against this serrated horizon to determine the date with an accuracy of just 1 or 2 days. As the year progressed, the sunrise would continue its journey south, reaching the midpoint of the sky at the spring equinox, when it would rise in the gap between the 6th and 7th towers. It would continue its southerly march until it reached its southernmost extreme at the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, around December 21st. On this day, the sun would rise directly to the right of the southernmost tower, the 13th in the line. After the summer solstice, the process would reverse. The sunrise would begin its journey back to the north, once again using the towers as a guide, until it returned to its starting point at the next winter solstice, completing the solar year. The system was a full-functioning 365-day calendar, written in stone and light. The 13 towers were not random. Their positions and the carefully calibrated gaps between them were designed to perfectly track the full arc of the sun's annual journey along the horizon. The system also worked in reverse. If an observer stood at the eastern observing point and looked west in the evening, they could use the same 13 towers to track the position of the sunset throughout the year. providing a secondary, corroborating method for determining the date. The entire complex, the 13 towers and their 2 carefully positioned observation points, was a complete and self-contained solar observatory. It was a sophisticated scientific instrument, built 2,300 years ago, that allowed the people of Chanquillo to master time itself. The discovery confirmed that Chanquillo was, without a doubt, the oldest astronomical observatory in the Americas, and a masterpiece of ancient science and engineering. The long-standing mystery of the enigmatic ruins was finally solved, but this solution only opened the door to a deeper appreciation of the complex society that had created it. The definitive identification of Chanquillo as a solar observatory was a monumental breakthrough in Andean archaeology. The mystery of the 13 towers was solved, their enigmatic purpose revealed with a breathtaking and elegant clarity. They were not forts nor shrines in the conventional sense, but the finely calibrated teeth of a giant astronomical instrument, a calendar of stone and light. This discovery, however, marked not an end to the inquiry, but a beginning. To understand what the Chanquillo complex was, is to be immediately confronted with the deeper and more fascinating question of why it was built. The creation of such a massive and precise instrument was not an academic exercise. It was a project of immense social and political importance. The observatory at Chanquillo was far more than a scientific tool. It was the ceremonial and political heart of its society, a stage for powerful rituals, a source of immense authority for a ruling elite, and a physical manifestation of a worldview that placed the sun at the very center of existence. The key to understanding the observatory's importance lies in recognizing the profound power that comes from the ability to predict and control time. In a pre-industrial agricultural society like that of ancient Chanquillo, life was governed by the rhythms of the seasons. The success or failure of the annual harvest, and therefore the survival of the community itself, depended on making critical decisions at precisely the right moment. The ability to know the exact day to prepare the fields, to plant the seeds, and to harvest the crops was a matter of life and death. The Chanquillo Solar Observatory provided its users with this exact knowledge. It was not a vague or approximate tool. The carefully spaced towers allowed a trained observer to determine the date with an accuracy of just 1 or 2 days. This predictive power was a source of immense authority. The people who controlled the observatory, likely a specialized class of priests, shamans, or sun watchers, would have been seen as possessing a unique and privileged connection to the divine. They were the intermediaries between the human world and the celestial realm, the ones who could read the sacred language of the sun. This knowledge would not have been shared freely with the general populace. It would have been a closely guarded secret, a form of sacred wisdom that set the ruling elite apart and legitimized their power. When the sun priest declared that the time for planting had arrived, it was not presented as a simple agricultural recommendation. It would have been delivered as a divine command, a message gleaned directly from the movements of the sun god. The populace would have seen the tangible results of this knowledge in the form of successful harvests, reinforcing their belief in the priest's power and their right to rule. The observatory was, in this sense, a political instrument, a tool for social control that ensured the stability and coherence of the Chanquillo polity, by demonstrating the leadership's mastery over the fundamental forces that governed their world. Beyond its practical agricultural applications, the control of the calendar was also essential for organizing the ritual life of the community. Religious festivals and ceremonies in ancient societies were not arbitrary events. They were tied to a sacred calendar that marked moments of cosmic significance. The solstices and equinoxes, the turning points in the sun's annual journey, were moments of great power and ritual importance across the ancient world. The winter solstice, the shortest day of the year, was a time of anxiety and hope, a moment when the community would perform rituals to ensure the rebirth of the sun and the return of the light and warmth. The summer solstice, the longest day, was a celebration of the sun's peak power. The equinoxes, when day and night were of equal length, were moments of cosmic balance. The Chanquillo Observatory allowed the priests to predict these key dates with perfect accuracy. This enabled them to schedule the great public festivals that brought the entire community together, reinforcing social bonds and reaffirming their shared cosmology. The ability to announce, "In 10 days, the sun will reach its southern house, and we will hold the great festival to honor its power," was a demonstration of profound authority. It showed that the leaders were not just following the seasons, they were in sync with the very machinery of the cosmos. The entire Chanquillo complex, when viewed through this lens, transforms from a collection of disparate structures into a single, integrated ceremonial landscape, a vast stage for the performance of sun worship. The two observation points to the east and west of the 13 towers were not just neutral viewing platforms. They were almost certainly highly restricted sacred spaces. The architecture of the eastern observing point, with its narrow corridor-like entrance, seems deliberately designed to limit access and to focus the viewer's attention. This was likely a place accessible only to the sun priests or the paramount ruler, the Holy of Holies from which the sacred knowledge was derived. The act of watching the sunrise or sunset from these points would have been a daily ritual, a sacred duty performed by the initiated few. The 13 towers themselves were more than just passive markers on the horizon. The presence of staircases leading to their summits strongly suggests that they were also active ceremonial platforms. It is easy to imagine rituals taking place on the towers that corresponded to the position of the sun. On a given day, as the sun rose behind a specific tower, a priest might ascend that same tower to make offerings, to light a sacred fire, or to conduct a sacrifice. The line of towers would have been a dynamic stage, with different parts of it being activated throughout the year. A constantly changing display of ritual activity that was visible to the entire community gathered below. The bright desert sun, catching the figures of the priests atop the towers, would have created a powerful and awe-inspiring spectacle, a piece of religious theater that dramatized the sun's journey across the sky. Even the massive, triple-walled fortress on the nearby hill takes on a new meaning in this context. While its defensive features are undeniable, its purpose may have been as much ceremonial as it was military. The grand labyrinthine gateways that lead into the fortress are not just practical defensive measures. They are architectural features designed to create a sense of procession and drama. They are designed to manage the movement of large groups of people, guiding them through a series of impressive architectural spaces. It is likely that the fortress was the site of the great public gatherings and festivals that were scheduled according to the solar calendar. After witnessing the sacred moment of the solstice sunrise from the plains below, the entire community might have been led in a grand procession through the gates of the fortress to participate in feasts, dances, and other communal rituals. The fortress, therefore, was not just a place to defend against enemies. It was a place to bring the community together in celebration of the cosmic order that governed their lives. The entire complex, the observation points, the towers, and the fortress worked together as a single cohesive unit, a machine for both observing the sun and for worshipping it. The discovery of such a sophisticated system of sun worship at Chanquillo has had a profound impact on our understanding of the development of Andean civilization. The most famous and well-documented sun cult in the Andes is that of the Inca Empire, which flourished over 1,500 years after Chanquillo was abandoned. The Inca emperors claimed to be the direct descendants of the sun god, Inti, and sun worship was the official state religion, a powerful tool of imperial ideology. The Great Coricancha, or Temple of the Sun, in the Inca capital of Cusco, was the most sacred shrine in the empire, its walls famously covered in sheets of gold. For a long time it was believed that this complex, politically charged solar cosmology was a relatively late development, an innovation of the powerful Inca state. Chanquillo completely overturns this assumption. It provides undeniable proof that a deep, complex, and politically significant form of sun worship was a foundational element of Andean civilization from a much, much earlier period. The people of Chanquillo, whose name we do not even know, had already developed a highly sophisticated system for observing the sun and integrating its movements into their political and religious life, more than a millennium and a half before the first Inca emperor came to power. This demonstrates a remarkable continuity of core cosmological beliefs in the Andes. The Inca did not invent sun worship. They inherited, adapted, and magnified a tradition that had been evolving in the region for thousands of years. Chanquillo is a crucial missing link in this long story, the earliest known physical manifestation of the powerful solar ideologies that would come to define the great empires of the Andes. The observatory is also a testament to the incredible intellectual achievements of these early Andean societies. The creation of the Chanquillo calendar required a sophisticated understanding of astronomy, mathematics, and engineering. The builders needed to make long-term, systematic observations of the sun's movements to understand its annual cycle. They needed to use geometric principles to lay out the precise alignment of the towers and the observation points. And they needed the engineering skill to construct the massive stone structures in just the right locations. This was a society that possessed a true scientific tradition, one that was deeply intertwined with its religious beliefs. The priests of Chanquillo were not just men of faith, they were astronomers and engineers, scientists of the sacred. Their observatory stands as a powerful refutation of any outdated notion of ancient peoples as primitive or unscientific. It is a monument to a lost science, proving that the quest to understand the cosmos, and to find our place within it, is one of the oldest and most fundamental of all human endeavors. The 13 Towers of Chanquillo are not just a calendar. They are a symbol of a society that was utterly and completely governed by the sun, a society that built its world, both physically and spiritually, in the image of the star that gave it life. The definitive identification of Chanquillo as a solar observatory was a monumental breakthrough in Andean archaeology. The mystery of the 13 Towers was solved, their enigmatic purpose revealed with a breathtaking and elegant clarity. They were not forts nor shrines in the conventional sense, but the finely calibrated teeth of a giant astronomical instrument, a calendar of stone and light. This discovery, however, marked not an end to the inquiry, but a beginning. To understand what the Chanquillo complex was, is to be immediately confronted with the deeper and more fascinating question of why it was built. The creation of such a massive and precise instrument was not an academic exercise. It was a project of immense social and political importance. The observatory at Chanquillo was far more than a scientific tool. It was the ceremonial and political heart of its society, a stage for powerful rituals, a source of immense authority for a ruling elite, and a physical manifestation of a worldview that placed the sun at the very center of existence. The key to understanding the observatory's importance lies in recognizing the profound power that comes from the ability to predict and control time. In a pre-industrial agricultural society like that of ancient Chanquillo, life was governed by the rhythms of the seasons. The success or failure of the annual harvest, and therefore the survival of the community itself, depended on making critical decisions at precisely the right moment. The ability to know the exact day to prepare the fields, to plant the seeds, and to harvest the crops was a matter of life and death. The Chanquillo Solar Observatory provided its users with this exact knowledge. It was not a vague or approximate tool. The carefully spaced towers allowed a trained observer to determine the date with an accuracy of just 1 or 2 days. This predictive power was a source of immense authority. The people who controlled the observatory, likely a specialized class of priests, shamans, or sun watchers, would have been seen as possessing a unique and privileged connection to the divine. They were the intermediaries between the human world and the celestial realm, the ones who could read the sacred language of the sun. This knowledge would not have been shared freely with the general populace. It would have been a closely guarded secret, a form of sacred wisdom that set the ruling elite apart and legitimized their power. When the sun priest declared that the time for planting had arrived, it was not presented as a simple agricultural recommendation. It would have been delivered as a divine command, a message gleaned directly from the movements of the sun god. The populace would have seen the tangible results of this knowledge in the form of successful harvests, reinforcing their belief in the priest's power and their right to rule. The observatory was, in this sense, a political instrument, a tool for social control that ensured the stability and coherence of the Tranquillo polity, by demonstrating the leadership's mastery over the fundamental forces that governed their world. Beyond its practical agricultural applications, the control of the calendar was also essential for organizing the ritual life of the community. Religious festivals and ceremonies in ancient societies were not arbitrary events. They were tied to a sacred calendar that marked moments of cosmic significance. The solstices and equinoxes, the turning points in the sun's annual journey, were moments of great power and ritual importance across the ancient world. The winter solstice, the shortest day of the year, was a time of anxiety and hope, a moment when the community would perform rituals to ensure the rebirth of the sun and the return of the light and warmth. The summer solstice, the longest day, was a celebration of the sun's peak power. The equinoxes, when day and night were of equal length, were moments of cosmic balance. The Tranquillo Observatory allowed the priests to predict these key dates with perfect accuracy. This enabled them to schedule the great public festivals that brought the entire community together, reinforcing social bonds and reaffirming their shared cosmology. The ability to announce, "In 10 days the sun will reach its southern house, and we will hold the great festival to honor its power," was a demonstration of profound authority. It showed that the leaders were not just following the seasons, they were in sync with the very machinery of the cosmos. The entire Tranquillo complex, when viewed through this lens, transforms from a collection of disparate structures into a single, integrated ceremonial landscape, a vast stage for the performance of sun worship. The two observation points to the east and west of the 13 towers were not just neutral viewing platforms. They were almost certainly highly restricted sacred spaces. The architecture of the eastern observing point, with its narrow corridor-like entrance, seems deliberately designed to limit access and to focus the viewer's attention. This was likely a place accessible only to the sun priests or the paramount ruler, the Holy of Holies from which the sacred knowledge was derived. The act of watching the sunrise or sunset from these points would have been a daily ritual, a sacred duty performed by the initiated few. The 13 towers themselves were more than just passive markers on the horizon. The presence of staircases leading to their summits strongly suggests that they were also active ceremonial platforms. It is easy to imagine rituals taking place on the towers that corresponded to the position of the sun. On a given day, as the sun rose behind a specific tower, a priest might ascend that same tower to make offerings, to light a sacred fire, or to conduct a sacrifice. The line of towers would have been a dynamic stage, with different parts of it being activated throughout the year. A constantly changing display of ritual activity that was visible to the entire community gathered below. The bright desert sun, catching the figures of the priests atop the towers, would have created a powerful and awe-inspiring spectacle, a piece of religious theater that dramatized the sun's journey across the sky. Even the massive, triple-walled fortress on the nearby hill takes on a new meaning in this context. While its defensive features are undeniable, its purpose may have been as much ceremonial as it was military. The grand labyrinthine gateways that lead into the fortress are not just practical defensive measures. They are architectural features designed to create a sense of procession and drama. They are designed to manage the movement of large groups of people, guiding them through a series of impressive architectural spaces. It is likely that the fortress was the site of the great public gatherings and festivals that were scheduled according to the solar calendar. After witnessing the sacred moment of the solstice sunrise from the plains below, the entire community might have been led in a grand procession through the gates of the fortress to participate in feasts, dances, and other communal rituals. The fortress, therefore, was not just a place to defend against enemies. It was a place to bring the community together in celebration of the cosmic order that governed their lives. The entire complex, the observation points, the towers, and the fortress work together as a single cohesive unit, a machine for both observing the sun and for worshipping it. The discovery of such a sophisticated system of sun worship at Chanquillo has had a profound impact on our understanding of the development of Andean civilization. The most famous and well-documented sun cult in the Andes is that of the Inca Empire, which flourished over 1,500 years after Chanquillo was abandoned. The Inca emperors claimed to be the direct descendants of the sun god, Inti, and sun worship was the official state religion, a powerful tool of imperial ideology. The Great Coricancha, or Temple of the Sun, in the Inca capital of Cusco, was the most sacred shrine in the empire, its walls famously covered in sheets of gold. For a long time it was believed that this complex, politically charged solar cosmology was a relatively late development, an innovation of the powerful Inca state. Chanquillo completely overturns this assumption. It provides undeniable proof that a deep, complex, and politically significant form of sun worship was a foundational element of Andean civilization from a much, much earlier period. The people of Chanquillo, whose name we do not even know, had already developed a highly sophisticated system for observing the sun and integrating its movements into their political and religious life, more than a millennium and a half before the first Inca emperor came to power. This demonstrates a remarkable continuity of core cosmological beliefs in the Andes. The Inca did not invent sun worship. They inherited, adapted, and magnified a tradition that had been evolving in the region for thousands of years. Chanquillo is a crucial missing link in this long story, the earliest known physical manifestation of the powerful solar ideologies that would come to define the great empires of the Andes. The observatory is also a testament to the incredible intellectual achievements of these early Andean societies. The creation of the Chanquillo calendar required a sophisticated understanding of astronomy, mathematics, and engineering. The builders needed to make long-term, systematic observations of the sun's movements to understand its annual cycle. They needed to use geometric principles to lay out the precise alignment of the towers and the observation points. And they needed the engineering skill to construct the massive stone structures in just the right locations. This was a society that possessed a true scientific tradition, one that was deeply intertwined with its religious beliefs. The priests of Chanquillo were not just men of faith. They were astronomers and engineers, scientists of the sacred. Their observatory stands as a powerful refutation of any outdated notion of ancient peoples as primitive or unscientific. It is a monument to a lost science, proving that the quest to understand the cosmos, and to find our place within it, is one of the oldest and most fundamental of all human endeavors. The 13 Towers of Chanquillo are not just a calendar. They are a symbol of a society that was utterly and completely governed by the sun, a society that built its world, both physically and spiritually, in the image of the star that gave it life. The decipherment of Chanquillo as the America's oldest solar observatory was a landmark achievement, a moment of brilliant clarity that solved a long-standing archaeological puzzle. The recognition of the 13 Towers as a precise solar calendar, integrated with its dedicated observation points and a grand ceremonial fortress, transformed our understanding of the site and the society that built it. Yet, as is so often the case in archaeology, the solution to one great mystery only serves to illuminate a host of new, deeper, and perhaps even more perplexing questions. While we now know what Chanquillo was and how it functioned, we are left to grapple with the series of profound and unanswered questions about its creators, its specific design, and its ultimate fate. The stones of Chanquillo, though no longer silent about their astronomical purpose, remain stubbornly mute on the human story behind their creation, leaving a tantalizing void at the heart of this incredible discovery. The first and most fundamental of these unanswered questions is also the most basic. Who were the builders of Chanquillo? Despite the monumental scale and sophistication of their achievement, we do not know what these people called themselves. They are a ghost culture, a society that left behind an indelible mark on the landscape, but vanished from the historical record without leaving their name. The Chanquillo complex was constructed and used during the early Horizon period of Andean prehistory, flourishing around the 4th century BC. This was a period of significant social and cultural development in the region, a time that saw the rise of complex societies and the construction of the first large-scale ceremonial centers. However, the culture that built Chanquillo appears to be distinct from the other major civilizations that are known from this period, such as the famous Chavan culture of the highlands. The architectural style of Chanquillo, particularly the massive, concentric walled fortress, is unique. The pottery found at the site, while sharing some regional characteristics, also has its own distinct local style. This suggests that the Chanquillo people were not simply an outpost of a larger, known culture, but were a powerful and independent polity with their own unique artistic and architectural traditions. They were clearly a highly organized, socially stratified society, capable of mobilizing and directing the immense labor required to build the fortress and the observatory. They possessed sophisticated knowledge of engineering, astronomy, and likely a powerful priesthood that held both spiritual and political authority. Yet, despite all of this, they remain anonymous. They left behind no form of writing, no carved reliefs of their rulers, and no iconography that would allow us to definitively link them to any other known group. They are defined solely by the magnificent and enigmatic structures they left behind. This anonymity is one of the most frustrating aspects of the Chanquillo mystery. We can admire their scientific and engineering genius, but we cannot know their story, their myths, their language, or the name of the king or priest who first conceived of this extraordinary monument to the sun. The second major puzzle lies in the specific design of the observatory itself, namely, the choice of 13 towers. The number is precise and clearly intentional. But why 13? If the goal was simply to mark the solstices, the two extreme points of the sun's annual journey, only 2 towers would have been needed. If the goal was to mark the equinoxes as well, a central marker would have sufficed. The creation of a line of 13 towers indicates a desire for a much higher degree of precision, a way to divide the year into smaller, more manageable increments. The gaps between the towers create 12 intervals, which immediately brings to mind the 12 months of a solar year. However, the connection is not that simple. A solar year is approximately 365.25 days long. Dividing this by 12 results in months that are roughly 30.4 days long. The sun's apparent movement along the horizon, however, is not uniform throughout the year. It appears to move most quickly around the equinoxes and slows down as it approaches its standstill points at the solstices. This means that the time it takes for the sunrise to move from one gap between the Chanquillo towers to the next would not have been constant. Some of the months defined by the towers would have been shorter, and some longer. The 13 towers do not, therefore, mark out a simple calendar of 12 equal months. They mark out a more complex and nuanced division of the solar year. So the question remains, what was the symbolic or practical significance of the number 13? It does not seem to align with any obvious lunar cycle. A lunar month, the time from one new moon to the next, is about 29.5 days. A year of 12 lunar months is only 354 days long, about 11 days short of a solar year. This discrepancy is a fundamental problem that all ancient calendar makers had to solve. Some cultures, like those in ancient Mesopotamia, used a lunisolar calendar, which had 12 lunar months but periodically inserted an extra, intercalary 13th month to keep the calendar in sync with the seasons. It is tempting to think that the 13 towers might be related to such a system, with the 13th tower perhaps representing this occasional intercalary month. However, there is no direct evidence to support this, and it is unclear how the static line of towers would have functioned to regulate such a dynamic system. The number 13 is also significant in other, later Mesoamerican calendar systems, such as the Mayan Tzolk'in, which uses a 260-day cycle based on a combination of 13 numbers and 20-day signs. But Chanquillo is an Andean site, far removed from Mesoamerica, and there is no evidence of any connection between the two calendrical traditions. The choice of 13 towers at Chanquillo appears to be a unique local solution. It was a number that clearly held a deep meaning for the builders, a meaning that was encoded into the very structure of their most sacred monument. Was it based on a mythological event, the number of deities in their pantheon, or some numerological principle that is now completely lost to us? The symbolic reason for the 13 towers is a code that we have not yet cracked, a tantalizing glimpse into the complex mind of the Chanquillo astronomers that remains just beyond our grasp. The final and perhaps most profound, unanswered question is why Chanquillo was abandoned. After centuries of continuous use, a period during which the observatory was meticulously maintained and served as the vibrant center of a thriving society, the entire site was deserted around the 1st century AD. The archaeological evidence for this abandonment is just as puzzling as the evidence for the site's creation. There are no signs of a violent conquest, no destruction layer, no evidence of a great fire or a final desperate battle at the fortress. The site was not destroyed, it was simply left. The people of Chanquillo seem to have walked away from their magnificent sun temple, leaving it to fall into a long, silent slumber. Why would a society abandon a site that was so central to its political, religious, and economic life? Several theories have been proposed, but none are conclusive. One possibility is a catastrophic environmental change. The coastal desert of Peru is a fragile ecosystem, dependent on the flow of water from the Andean highlands. A prolonged period of drought, or a series of powerful El Niño events that disrupted the local climate and marine ecosystems, could have led to a widespread agricultural collapse. If the people were starving, they may have been forced to migrate to more fertile regions, abandoning their ceremonial center. The sun priests, for all their ability to predict the seasons, would have been powerless in the face of a fundamental climate shift. Their failure to appease the gods and bring back the rain could have led to a crisis of faith, a loss of political authority, and the ultimate dissolution of the Chanquillo polity. Another theory points to the possibility of internal social or political collapse. The construction and maintenance of Chanquillo required a strong, centralized authority. It is possible that this authority was overthrown by a rival faction, or that the society simply broke apart due to internal strife. A new ruling dynasty or a new religious cult might have risen to power, one that did not venerate the sun in the same way or that deliberately rejected the old traditions as a way of consolidating its own authority. In this scenario, Chanquillo was not abandoned because of environmental failure, but because of a cultural and political revolution that made its original purpose obsolete. A third possibility is the arrival of a new, external threat. While there is no evidence of a direct conquest at Chanquillo itself, a new and more powerful military force may have emerged in a neighboring valley. The people of Chanquillo, facing a superior enemy, may have chosen to abandon their settlement and retreat to a more defensible location, rather than risk annihilation in a battle they could not win. The fortress, for all its impressive walls, may have been deemed insufficient against this new threat. All of these scenarios are plausible, but they remain speculative. The archaeological record at Chanquillo has not yet provided a definitive answer. The abandonment of the site is as quiet and mysterious as its anonymous creation. The Great Observatory, which had marked the passage of time with such precision for centuries, simply ceased to be used. The sun continued its annual journey along the horizon, the solstices and equinoxes arrived with perfect predictability, but there was no one left in the observation posts to watch, no priests on the towers to perform the rituals, and no community in the fortress to celebrate. The silence that fell over Chanquillo in the 1st century AD would last for nearly 2,000 years. The site remains a powerful monument, not only to the scientific genius of its creators, but also to the fragility of human civilization. It is a testament to a society that reached for the sun, and then for reasons we may never fully understand, vanished back into the shadows of the past. Chanquillo's 13 towers are more than just ancient stone. They are a monument to a lost science and a forgotten faith, proving that sophisticated astronomy was being practiced in the Americas at a time we once thought impossible. Older than Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids, a massive stone mound sits in the Irish countryside. For one brief moment each year on the winter solstice, a beam of sunlight penetrates its heart, illuminating a secret hidden for 5,000 years. In the verdant rolling countryside of Ireland's Boyne Valley, a landscape steeped in myth and history, lies a monument of such staggering antiquity and sophistication that it challenges our very perception of the prehistoric world. This is Newgrange, a massive kidney-shaped mound of earth and stone that, from a distance, could be mistaken for a natural hill. It is, however, entirely man-made, a colossal piece of Neolithic architecture that stands as one of the most important and enigmatic structures ever built. Predating the Great Pyramids of Giza by more than 500 years and Stonehenge by a full millennium, Newgrange is not merely old. It is a testament to the unexpected genius of its creators. For centuries, it was known to local people as a fairy mound, a place of legend and folklore, its true purpose lost to time. But modern archaeology has revealed it to be a masterpiece of ancient engineering, a complex passage tomb designed with a celestial purpose of breathtaking precision. The monument of Newgrange itself, in its sheer scale, its intricate construction, and its stunning artistic decoration, is the first and most fundamental piece of this profound historical puzzle. The most immediate and overwhelming impression of Newgrange is its immense scale. The structure is a massive circular mound, covering over an acre of land and measuring approximately 280 feet, 85 meters, in diameter. It rises to a height of about 40 feet, 12 meters, a man-made mountain dominating the surrounding landscape. The mound itself is a complex, layered structure, composed of an estimated 200,000 tons of earth and carefully selected water-rolled stones, which were transported from the banks of the nearby River Boyne, over a mile away. This colossal undertaking would have required a massive, highly organized workforce. The labor of thousands of people, sustained over a period of many years, perhaps even several generations, would have been necessary to quarry, transport, and assemble such an enormous quantity of material. This was not the work of a small egalitarian farming community. It was a state-level project, indicative of a society with a powerful leadership capable of commanding and directing a vast pool of labor towards a single sacred goal. The external appearance of the mound is as impressive as its size. The structure is revet or faced with a brilliant white quartz wall, the stones for which were sourced from the Wicklow Mountains, over 50 miles to the south. This gleaming white facade would have made the monument a stunning and highly visible landmark, shining brightly in the Irish sun. Interspersed within the white quartz are smooth, dark, oval-shaped granite boulders, creating a dramatic and beautiful decorative pattern. The effort required to transport these specific types of stone over such vast distances speaks to the immense importance of the monument's aesthetic appearance. The builders were not just creating a functional structure. They were creating a work of art on a monumental scale, a building designed to inspire awe and reverence. Surrounding the base of this great mound is a ring of 97 massive, recumbent stones known as curbstones. These stones, some weighing several tons, form a continuous border that defines the sacred precinct of the monument. Many of them, particularly the ones near the entrance, are covered in elaborate and beautiful abstract art. The most famous of these is Curbstone 1, the magnificent entrance stone that guards the doorway to the tomb. It is a masterpiece of Neolithic art, its surface covered in a complex and fluid design of interconnected triple spirals, chevrons, and lozenges. The artistry is confident and skillful, the product of a mature and highly developed artistic tradition. This megalithic art, found on dozens of the stones both outside and inside the tomb, is another of Newgrange's great mysteries. The symbols are entirely abstract, their meaning lost to us, but they clearly held a deep significance for the builders, likely representing their cosmology, their mythology, or their understanding of the spiritual world. The true purpose of Newgrange, however, lies hidden within this man-made mountain. The monument is a classic example of a passage tomb, a specific type of megalithic structure found along the Atlantic coast of Europe. A single entrance on the southeastern side of the mound gives access to a long, narrow passageway, approximately 62 feet, 19 meters in length. This passage is a remarkable feat of engineering in its own right. It is constructed from massive, upright standing stones or orthostats, which form the walls. The passage terminates in a central chamber, located directly beneath the apex of the mound. This chamber is not a simple rectangle, but has a complex, cruciform or cross-shaped layout, with 3 smaller side chambers or recesses opening off the main central space. It is within these recesses that the remains of the dead were placed. Archaeological excavations have found the cremated bones of at least 5 individuals, along with grave goods such as polished stone pendants, bone pins, and chalk marbles. This confirms that Newgrange, at its most basic level, was a tomb, a house for the honored dead. But the sheer monumentality of the structure, and the fact that so few individuals were buried within it, strongly suggests that its function went far beyond that of a simple sepulchre. It was not a cemetery for the general population, but a sacred vault for a select few, perhaps a ruling dynasty of priest-kings, revered spiritual leaders, or legendary founding ancestors. The most astonishing feat of engineering at Newgrange is found in the construction of this central chamber's roof. To span the wide open space of the chamber, the builders employed a sophisticated technique, known as a corbelled vault. They laid horizontal courses of large, flat stones, with each successive course projecting slightly inwards over the one below it. This gradual inward stepping of the stones created a high beehive-shaped dome that is entirely self-supporting. The technical skill required to balance these massive stones and to calculate the precise angle of the overhang is extraordinary. But the true genius of the Newgrange builders is demonstrated by the fact that this corbelled roof, constructed 5,200 years ago from nothing more than carefully selected, unmortared stone, has remained completely and perfectly waterproof to this day. Not a single drop of water has ever penetrated the central chamber from above. This incredible feat of ancient engineering has protected the interior of the tomb and its contents, preserving them in a near-perfect state for over 5 millennia. It is a testament to a level of technical mastery and architectural foresight that was simply not thought to be possible for a Neolithic society. The monument of Newgrange, therefore, is a paradox. It is undeniably a tomb, a house for the dead, yet the immense scale of its construction and the incredible sophistication of its engineering and artistry seem wildly disproportionate for the burial of just a handful of individuals. It was built with a reverence and a technical skill that rivaled any civilization on Earth at that time. The builders transported hundreds of thousands of tons of material, sourced specific decorative stones from over 50 miles away, covered the structure in a brilliant white facade, adorned it with a complex and beautiful abstract art, and engineered a roof that has defied the wet Irish climate for over 5,000 years. All of this points to a purpose that transcended the simple interment of the dead. The monument was not just about death. It was about something more, a deeper connection between the world of the ancestors, the world of the living, and the great, powerful cycles of the cosmos. The key to this deeper meaning would lie hidden for millennia, waiting to be rediscovered in a brief and magical alignment of stone, earth, and light. For thousands of years after its construction and subsequent abandonment by its original builders, the true purpose of Newgrange remained a forgotten secret, veiled by the mists of time and the growth of myth. The Great Mound was never entirely lost. Its imposing presence in the Boyne Valley landscape ensured it remained a landmark. It became known in later Irish folklore as a sidhe, a fairy mound, a dwelling place for the mythical, supernatural beings of the Tuatha De Danann, and was associated with powerful gods like the Dagda and his son Angus. While these myths hinted at the site's ancient power and sacredness, they contained no memory of its astronomical function. The knowledge that this monumental tomb was, in fact, a precisely calibrated astronomical instrument, a machine designed to capture the light of the winter solstice sun, was completely lost. The rediscovery of this extraordinary phenomenon in the mid-20th century was not the result of a single eureka moment, but of careful archaeological investigation and a stroke of serendipitous timing. It was a discovery that would transform our understanding of Newgrange, elevating it from a simple, albeit magnificent, tomb to a masterpiece of Neolithic science and celestial architecture. After centuries of neglect, during which time the mound had become overgrown with trees and its entrance blocked by rubble, formal archaeological investigation of Newgrange began in the 1960s. The project was led by Professor Michael J. O'Kelly of University College Cork, a meticulous and highly respected Irish archaeologist. His primary goal was to excavate the interior of the tomb, to study its construction, and to conserve the monument for future generations. For several years, his team painstakingly cleared the long passage and the central chamber, documenting the megalithic art and recovering the cremated remains and grave goods of its Neolithic occupants. As the excavation progressed, O'Kelly became increasingly intrigued by the local folklore and the orientation of the tomb. He noted that the passage was aligned in a generally southeasterly direction, the direction of the midwinter sunrise. While many passage tombs have a general solar alignment, O'Kelly began to suspect that the orientation of Newgrange might be far more precise and significant than was commonly believed. The definitive clue that would lead to the great rediscovery came from a unique and initially puzzling architectural feature located directly above the main entrance to the tomb. This was a rectangular opening about 3 feet wide and 1 foot high, set into the wall of the mound just above the massive lintel stone of the passage doorway. This opening, which O'Kelly dubbed the roof box, was a mystery. It was clearly a deliberate, purpose-built feature, constructed with the same care as the rest of the monument. It was sealed with a large, decorated quartz block that could be removed from the outside, and a system of grooves suggested it was designed to be watertight. Its function, however, was not immediately apparent. It was too high to be a secondary entrance and seemed to serve no obvious structural purpose. O'Kelly speculated that it might be a light box, an aperture designed to let light into the passage. Based on the tomb's orientation, he formed a specific hypothesis that this roof box was designed to allow the light of the rising sun on the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year, to penetrate the tomb. This was a bold and exciting hypothesis, but one that could only be tested by being present at the site at the exact right moment. In a now famous account, Professor O'Kelly decided to test his theory on the morning of December 21, 1967. He and his team gathered at the monument in the pre-dawn darkness. O'Kelly positioned himself deep inside the tomb, standing in the absolute pitch-black darkness of the central chamber, a darkness that had likely been undisturbed by sunlight for millennia. As the appointed time of the sunrise approached, he waited in anticipation. What happened next, he would later describe as one of the most moving and profound experiences of his life. As the sun crested the distant horizon, a narrow, brilliant beam of golden light shot through the roof box, pierced the entire 60-foot length of the dark passage, and struck the floor of the central chamber at his feet. The beam slowly widened, flooding the inner sanctum with a warm, ethereal glow and illuminating the intricate megalithic art carved on the stones. For approximately 17 minutes, the heart of the ancient tomb was alive with light. Then, just as precisely as it had arrived, the beam narrowed and retreated, plunging the chamber back into absolute darkness for another year. O'Kelly's hypothesis was confirmed in the most dramatic and spectacular way possible. He was the first person in thousands of years to witness the extraordinary event that the builders of Newgrange had so masterfully engineered. The rediscovery of the winter solstice alignment was a landmark moment in archaeology. It proved that Newgrange was not just a tomb, but a highly sophisticated astronomical device. The builders were not just master engineers. They were brilliant astronomers who possessed a deep and precise knowledge of the sun's annual cycle. The existence of the roof box is the single most compelling piece of evidence that this alignment was not a lucky accident, but a central and deliberate part of the monument's design. If the builders had simply wanted a general solar alignment, they could have oriented the main passage doorway towards the winter solstice sunrise. The light would have entered, but it would have been a diffuse, general illumination of the passage entrance. The creation of the specialized roof box demonstrates a much more specific and sophisticated intention. The builders wanted to create a highly controlled and dramatic effect. They designed a system that would capture a narrow, concentrated beam of light and project it deep into the very heart of the tomb, to the place where the ancestral remains were laid. The roof box acts like the aperture of a camera or the slit of a pinhole projector, focusing the light and creating a sharp, well-defined beam. It is a piece of precision engineering, designed to produce a specific, theatrical, and deeply symbolic result. The quartz block that sealed the roof box for the rest of the year further emphasizes its special function. This was not an opening that was meant to be left open. It was a sacred window, designed to be ceremonially opened only at that one special moment in the year when the sun was at its weakest and was about to be reborn. The precision of the alignment is another aspect that continues to astound engineers and astronomers. To achieve this effect, the Neolithic builders had to solve a series of complex logistical and astronomical problems. First, they had to determine the exact position of the winter solstice sunrise on the local horizon. This would have required years, perhaps even decades, of careful systematic observation, likely using a system of sighting posts to track the sun's northern and southern limits throughout the year. Once they had identified this precise point on the horizon, they had to orient the entire massive structure towards it. Laying out the 60-foot-long passage with the required degree of accuracy, using only rudimentary tools, would have been an incredible challenge. Furthermore, they had to calculate the correct angle of inclination for the passage. The passage floor at Newgrange is not flat. It rises gently from the entrance to the central chamber. The builders had to calculate this upward slope with perfect precision, ensuring that the light entering from the roof box, at its low winter solstice angle, would clear the floor of the passage and travel unimpeded all the way to the back of the chamber. A miscalculation of even a fraction of a degree would have caused the beam to hit the floor or the ceiling of the passage, ruining the entire effect. The fact that it works perfectly 5,200 years after it was built is a stunning testament to their scientific and mathematical prowess. It is important to note that due to slight changes in the Earth's axial tilt, the obliquity of the ecliptic, over the millennia, the alignment is no longer as perfect as it once was. At the time of its construction, the beam of light would have been even more precise, forming a sharp rectangle of light on the floor of the chamber for the full duration of the event. The winter solstice phenomenon at Newgrange is, therefore, a brief, precise, and profoundly beautiful event. For just a few days around December 21st, for a mere 17 minutes each morning, the sun is allowed to penetrate the eternal darkness of the tomb. The event is a dramatic interplay of light and shadow, a piece of sacred theater that was deliberately and ingeniously choreographed by its ancient creators. The rediscovery of this secret has transformed our understanding of the monument and the people who built it. It shows that they were not just burying their dead. They were creating a powerful connection between the world of the ancestors, the world of the living, and the great life-giving cycles of the cosmos. The brief, golden light that fills the chamber is a message from the past, a silent testament to a people who understood the sky with the depth and precision that we are only now beginning to appreciate. Professor O'Kelly's experience in 1967 was more than just a successful scientific experiment. It was the moment when the true genius of Newgrange was, quite literally, brought back into the light. The revelation that Newgrange was not merely a tomb, but a precisely engineered astronomical instrument designed to capture the winter solstice sun, was a profound turning point in our understanding of Neolithic Europe. The discovery of the lightbox and the witnessing of the celestial alignment solved the mechanical how of the monument's great secret. Yet, it simultaneously opened up a much deeper and more compelling field of inquiry: the why. Why did a society that existed over 5,000 years ago invest such an immense amount of resources, labor, and intellectual capital into creating a structure with this specific singular function? The answer lies in moving beyond the stones and the stars, and into the symbolic and ritual world of its creators. The astronomical alignment was not an end in itself. It was the means to a powerful symbolic and ceremonial end. Newgrange, with its annual penetration of light into darkness, was almost certainly a temple dedicated to the cyclical nature of life, death, and rebirth. A place where the community could participate in rituals that affirmed the victory of life over the darkness of winter and ensured the continuity of their world. At its most fundamental level, the evidence suggests that Newgrange's purpose transcended that of a simple tomb. While the cremated remains of at least 5 individuals were found within its central chamber, the sheer scale and complexity of the monument are wildly disproportionate to the task of housing the dead. The Great Pyramids of Egypt, for all their grandeur, were primarily tombs for a single pharaoh. Newgrange, a structure of comparable antiquity and ambition, housed only a handful of remains. This suggests that the individuals interred within it were of immense importance, perhaps founding ancestors, a dynasty of priest-kings, or legendary heroes, but it also indicates that the structure's primary function was not custodial. It was not a passive house for the dead, but an active stage for the living. The immense effort of its construction, the sourcing of rare and beautiful stones from vast distances, and above all, the breathtaking precision of its solar alignment, all point to a powerful and ongoing ritual function that was central to the life of the entire community. The tomb was a component of the monument, but the monument itself was a temple. The key to decoding the meaning of this temple lies in the powerful symbolism of the event it was built to celebrate: the winter solstice. For any pre-industrial agricultural society living in the temperate latitudes of northern Europe, the winter solstice is the most critical and anxious moment of the year. It is the shortest day and the longest night, the moment when the sun is at its weakest, its arc across the sky low and brief. It is the nadir of the annual cycle, a time of cold, darkness, and apparent death in the natural world. The days have been growing progressively shorter, the light has been fading, and the vital life-giving power of the sun seems to be slipping away. For a people whose entire existence depended on the sun for the warmth that sustained them and the light that grew their crops, this would have been a moment of profound cosmic anxiety. Would the sun continue to fade, plunging the world into a permanent winter? Or would it, as it had always done before, halt its decline and begin its journey back towards the strength and light of summer? The winter solstice marks the turning point. It is the day when the sun dies and is reborn. After reaching its southernmost extreme, it appears to stand still for a few days before it begins its slow, triumphant climb back towards the north, and the days once again begin to lengthen. This moment of solar rebirth was one of the most powerful and universally celebrated events in the ancient world. It was a promise of renewal, a guarantee that the cycle of life would continue, that the spring would return, and that the harvest would be plentiful once more. The builders of Newgrange did not just observe this event. They built a massive, enduring monument to capture and celebrate it. The symbolism of the alignment at Newgrange is almost overwhelmingly powerful. The Great Mound itself, dark and silent for 364 days of the year, can be seen as a representation of the earth, the womb of a mother goddess, or the realm of the dead and the ancestors. It is a place of darkness, dormancy, and primordial power. The beam of light from the newborn winter solstice sun, penetrating deep into this dark, sacred space through the purpose-built roof box, is a dramatic and unmistakable symbol of fertilization, conception, and renewal. It is a moment of hierogamy, a sacred marriage between the Sky Father, the Sun, and the Earth Mother, the tomb. This annual event would have been seen as a powerful act of cosmic magic, a ritual that did not just mark the rebirth of the sun, but actively ensured it. The light entering the chamber would have been seen as the life-giving seed of the sun god, impregnating the earth and guaranteeing the fertility of the land, the livestock, and the people for the coming year. This powerful symbolism would have formed the core of the community's most important annual ritual. The winter solstice at Newgrange was likely a time of immense communal gathering and ceremony. While only a select few, perhaps the chieftain or the high priests, would have been permitted inside the chamber to witness the event directly, the entire community would have assembled outside the great monument. The event would have been a piece of powerful religious theater. As the crowd waited in the cold, pre-dawn darkness, the priests would have ceremonially removed the decorated quartz block that sealed the roof box, opening the sacred window to the sky. As the sun rose and the beam of light shot into the tomb, it would have been a moment of immense celebration and relief. It was tangible proof that the sun had been reborn, that their world was secure for another year. The ritual likely connected the renewal of the sun with the power of the ancestors buried within the tomb. This interpretation helps to explain the monument's dual function, as both a tomb and a temple. The presence of the ancestral remains was essential to the ritual. The ancestors were not forgotten figures. They were active participants in the spiritual life of the community, powerful intermediaries whose spirits, housed in the great stone mound, played a crucial role in ensuring the world's continuity. The Newgrange ritual was a way of reaffirming the community's place within a cosmic order that bound together the past, the ancestors, the present, the living community, and the future, the promise of the sun's return. This understanding of Newgrange as a temple for solar rituals also places it within a broader context of Neolithic and Bronze Age beliefs across Europe. The sun was clearly a central object of veneration for many of these cultures. Stonehenge, built a millennium after Newgrange, is famously aligned with the solstices. The thousands of megalithic stones at Carnac in France are also believed by many to have an astronomical purpose. Newgrange, however, is arguably the most sophisticated and architecturally complex of all these solar monuments. Its unique roof box and the dramatic focus beam of light it creates suggest a highly specific and theatrical form of ritual that was unique to the Boyne Valley culture. While other cultures built open-air monuments to observe the sun, the builders of Newgrange created an enclosed, secret space, a dark womb that was brought to life for only a few brief moments each year. This suggests a belief system focused on themes of secrecy, initiation, and the dramatic revelation of sacred knowledge. In conclusion, while we will never know the exact prayers that were chanted or the specific rituals that were performed, the overwhelming weight of the evidence points to a single coherent purpose for Newgrange. It was far more than a tomb. It was a temple, a place of immense spiritual power, designed and built to celebrate and participate in the great cosmic drama of solar death and rebirth. The builders harnessed a sophisticated understanding of engineering and astronomy to create a piece of sacred theater, a machine for capturing a moment of divine power. The annual illumination of the chamber was a powerful, symbolic act that reaffirmed the community's relationship with the gods, honored their ancestors, and ensured the continuity of life itself. It was the central life-affirming event in their ritual calendar, a testament to a people who saw their world not as a random collection of events, but as a deeply ordered cosmos, governed by the sacred and predictable cycles of the sun. The brief light that still enters Newgrange's chamber is a 5,000-year-old echo of this powerful and profound belief. The revelation of Newgrange as a precisely engineered solar observatory and a temple for communal ritual solved many of the monument's greatest riddles. It provided a powerful and coherent explanation for its specific orientation, its unique architectural features like the roof box, and its immense scale. However, this newfound clarity has, in turn, cast a brighter light on a set of equally profound and persistent mysteries, those surrounding the builders themselves. While we can now admire the what and the how of their incredible achievement, the who remains largely shrouded in shadow. The Neolithic people of the Boyne Valley, who conceived of and constructed this world-class monument, left behind no written records, no self-portraits, and no clear narrative of their own society. We are left with their magnificent creation and a host of tantalizing but unanswered questions about the meaning of their art, the nature of their social organization, and their relationship with the wider sacred landscape they inhabited. One of the most immediate and visually striking puzzles of Newgrange is the rich and complex megalithic art that adorns its stones. The monument is not an unadorned structure. It is a canvas for one of the largest and most sophisticated collections of abstract art in prehistoric Europe. Dozens of the massive curbstones that ring the mound, as well as many of the orthostats lining the interior passage and chamber, are covered in intricate and skillfully executed carvings. The motifs are entirely abstract and geometric, a distinct vocabulary of shapes that includes concentric circles, chevrons, V-shapes, zigzags, lozenges, diamond shapes, and most famously, complex interconnected spirals. The famous entrance stone, Curbstone 1, is the undisputed masterpiece of this tradition. Its entire surface is covered in a swirling fluid composition of triple spirals and other motifs, carved with a confidence and artistry that is breathtaking. This art is not random graffiti. It is a deliberate and meaningful symbolic system, but its code is one that we have lost the key to. The central mystery is, quite simply, what do these symbols mean? They are not a form of writing as we know it. They do not appear to be pictograms representing recognizable objects from the natural world like animals, plants, or people. They are a pure abstract language of form. This has led to a wide range of interpretations, all of which remain speculative. One prominent theory suggests that the art is related to altered states of consciousness and shamanic experience. Neuropsychological research has shown that the human brain, under certain conditions such as sensory deprivation, like being in the dark chamber of a tomb, rhythmic drumming, or the influence of psychotropic plants, can generate a series of internal visual patterns known as entoptic phenomena. These patterns often include zigzags, grids, and swirling vortexes or spirals. It is possible that the art at Newgrange is a depiction of these internal spiritual visions. Another school of thought proposes that the art may be a form of mapping. The symbols could be highly stylized representations of the local landscape. The concentric circles might represent the Great Mound itself or other nearby monuments, while the lines and chevrons could be paths, rivers, or hills. It could be a sacred map, depicting not just the physical geography, but the mythological and spiritual significance of the Boyne Valley. A related idea is that it is a map of the heavens, a primitive star chart depicting constellations or celestial events. A third possibility is that the symbols are a form of numerological or calendrical notation, related to the monument's astronomical function. The number of spirals, rings, or chevrons could correspond to specific counts of days, months, or years, a way of recording time or predicting future events. For example, some have suggested that the spirals represent the movement of the sun or moon over a certain period. This is an intriguing idea, as it would link the art directly to the known function of the tomb, but again, without a Rosetta Stone to help us decipher the system, the meaning remains opaque. The art of Newgrange is a silent language. We can appreciate its beauty and complexity, we can recognize its recurring motifs, but we cannot, with any certainty, read the message it was intended to convey. It is a profound intellectual and spiritual statement from our ancestors, but one whose meaning has been lost to the millennia. The second great puzzle concerns the social and political organization of the society that built Newgrange. The construction of the monument was an enormous undertaking, a project that would have taxed the resources of even a powerful and well-organized state. Yet, the people who built Newgrange were Neolithic farmers. They lived in small, scattered homesteads, possessed no metal tools, had not invented the wheel, and most importantly, had no centralized state structure in the way we would understand it, with a king, a bureaucracy, and a standing army. So, how did this society manage to achieve such a monumental feat of collective action? This is a profound social mystery. The construction would have required a large, coordinated workforce, numbering in the hundreds if not thousands. These workers had to be fed, housed, and directed over a period of many years. This implies the existence of a surplus of food, enough to support a large class of non-food producers, the builders, for an extended time. It also implies a powerful and persuasive leadership. A paramount chieftain or a council of elders must have had the authority to command this labor, to persuade different families and clans from across a wide region to put aside their daily tasks and contribute to this massive multi-generational project. What was the source of this authority? Was it based on military power, inherited status, or religious charisma? The project would also have required a surprising degree of specialized knowledge. There would have been the architects or master builders who designed the structure, the engineers who understood the principles of leverage and structural mechanics needed to move the massive stones and build the core-belled vault, the geologists who knew where to source the best stone, and of course the astronomer priests who made the precise solar calculations. This suggests a society that was not just composed of farmers, but one that supported a class of highly skilled specialists, the keepers of the sacred and technical knowledge needed to build the temple. How was this knowledge developed, protected, and passed down through the generations in a society without writing? It was likely transmitted through a long and rigorous oral tradition, an apprenticeship system where the masters passed their secrets directly to their chosen students. The very existence of Newgrange forces us to imagine a Neolithic society that was far more complex, intellectually sophisticated, and socially stratified than was previously thought possible. It challenges the old image of Neolithic life as simple and egalitarian, and replaces it with the picture of a dynamic and hierarchical society, capable of achieving things that would be difficult even for us today. The third and final mystery is the relationship between Newgrange and its surrounding sacred landscape. Newgrange is not an isolated monument. It is the centerpiece of a much larger ritual complex known as Brú Bóin, the palace or mansion of the Boyne, which is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This complex includes two other massive passage tombs, Nouth and Douth, as well as dozens of smaller satellite tombs and standing stones. Nouth is in many ways even more complex than Newgrange. It is a larger mound with two separate passages, one oriented towards the sunrise on the spring equinox, and the other towards the sunset on the autumn equinox. It is also surrounded by smaller tombs and contains more than a quarter of all the megalithic art in Western Europe. Douth, though less excavated, also has solar alignments. This raises a host of questions. What was the relationship between these three great monuments? Were they built by the same people at the same time as part of a single grand design? Or were they built by different groups at different times, perhaps as rival centers of power? The current evidence suggests they were built over a period of several centuries, with Newgrange being the oldest. Perhaps they represent a sequence, a shift in ritual focus from the winter solstice at Newgrange to the equinoxes at Nouth. The entire Brú Bóin complex seems to be a giant astronomical landscape, a place where the community came to observe and celebrate the entire solar year. Why was this specific bend in the River Boyne chosen for such a concentration of sacred monuments? The river itself may have been seen as a sacred entity, a pathway to the otherworld. The landscape was likely already imbued with myth and legend long before the great tombs were built. The builders of Newgrange and its sister sites were not just building on empty land. They were amplifying and monumentalizing a pre-existing sacred place. The relationship between these sites, the precise nature of the rituals that connected them, and the reasons for the eventual decline and abandonment of the entire complex around 2500 BC remain key areas of ongoing research. The people of the Boyne Valley created one of the most sophisticated and beautiful sacred landscapes in the world. They possessed a deep understanding of engineering, art, astronomy, and social organization, but they left behind no words to explain their motivations or their beliefs. The puzzles of their abstract art, their complex social structure, and their grand ritual landscape are the final, tantalizing mysteries of Newgrange. The monument stands as a silent but powerful testament to their genius, a permanent reminder of a lost world of knowledge and faith, and a challenge to future generations of archaeologists to continue to listen for the faint whispers of meaning that still echo from its ancient stones. Newgrange is more than a feat of ancient engineering. It is a precisely calibrated instrument designed to capture the light of a single moment, a testament to a people whose entire world revolved around the cycles of the sun, life, and death. Thanks for exploring with Ancient Relics Keeper. Stay curious, question everything, and remember the truth is often buried deeper than we think.